Hello and welcome everybody to a brand new episode of r/MaliciousCompliance. My name's Ryan, the official host here on Reddit Voice, and I look forward to bringing you guys today's top stories. Before I do, I'd really appreciate it if you made sure you were subscribed with notifications turned on, that way you could stay up to date with all the latest and the greatest. Oh, you want some mathematical rigor? I'll give you some. This happened while I was in 12th grade. I'm pretty good, and by that I mean, without false modesty, that I was basically dominating my entire school at math. It was, and still is, one of my main passions, and I was basically 2 or 3 years ahead of the required math level. I also have a pretty large math culture, which will be important later. Once again, this is not to brag, but just to give you an idea about why messing up with me about maths is not a good idea. The story. My 12th grade teacher was special. It was his first year at this school, and for context, he was a very old, prideful jerk. Now I know that math is all about rigor, but every mathematician out there will tell you that excessive rigor isn't helpful at all, and often hides the actual math. This teacher wanted everything to be detailed, like excessively detailed. If you skipped one line in your derivation, you would lose points. Even though, as I said, this line could easily be done in your head. Like if you ended up with 2 times 2 plus 1, and you were enough of a fool to write on the next line 5, you would lose points because you didn't write 4 plus 1, and then, only then, equals 5. Now I get this kind of rigor can be good when dealing with a new topic, but this level of detail in the 12th grade is stupid. The part that really made me angry was the grades. I would usually end up with perfect grades. Side note, where I live, grades aren't given as percentages, so I'll translate the notes in approximative percentages. But not with him. I barely succeeded in getting higher than a 70, whether in tests or in homework. And even though everything was correct, and I didn't really care because the grades themselves aren't really important for future school admissions, the position in the class was, and I was, still very much at the top. No, what made me angry was the other students. Other side note here, I planned to become a math professor, and I always helped my classmates when they had a hard time in math, explaining concepts and whatnot. This year, everyone's grades plummet. I'm talking about hours of hard work to go from 25 to 30%, and for them, the future wasn't as sure as for me, because the ranking was always changing. On the day before holidays, he gave us back a homework. I barely had a 60%, and my best friend, who was struggling with the topic, basic integration, ended up with like a 10%, even though any reasonable teacher would have graded her something like a 60. The revenge. I went ballistic. The end of the year was slowly approaching, and such disastrous results could bar my friend, and a lot of other students from getting accepted into the schools they deserved. But the teacher gave homework for the holidays. I had 2 weeks, and I've had enough of his shit. So the revenge is coming. Remember when I told you I had a lot of math culture? This happens to include axioms of ZFC, set theory, and the work of Bourbaki. Hope I said that right. To those who didn't understand a single word here, maths in their purest form are based on some elementary bricks that have to be assumed and can't be proven, even though they seem intuitive. Those bricks are called axioms, and the ZFC set theory is a collection of such axioms. Nicola Bourbaki, a fictive name given a group of mathematicians that decide to rewrite maths based on the axioms. Their work consists pretty much impossible to read cumbersome notations that are as rigorous as you can get. So I did exactly that. Day and night, with very little breaks, I wrote hundreds of pages of pure, unreadable, cumbersome, but rigorous math. A level of rigor even my teacher himself wasn't expecting from anyone. And this wasn't easy, because I had to construct the theory of integration from scratch. It was actually a nice experience because I ended up stumbling on some very interesting topics, but it was exhausting. Still, after 2 weeks, I successfully completed the homework with the absolute rigor. Now, I could have said absolute horseshit for most of it because I was pretty sure he wouldn't go through all that, but I ended up taking it as a personal challenge that I happily completed. The reaction. On the first day of class, I arrived a little bit early with my bag in a suitcase to contain the massive amount of paper, handwritten mind you, and before the teacher arrives, I take my work out of the suitcase and my classmates are confused, because no one except my friend knew my plan. When the teacher arrived and asked us to bring our homework, I let everyone do it, and then I stood up, picked up my ridiculously sized homework, and walked slowly to his desk, while his face was more and more puzzled with every step. I laid down the pile with a big smile and started to walk away when he interrupted me. "What is that?" "My homework. Is there an issue?" "I want to talk to you after class." All of this was expected. I knew he wouldn't confront me in front of the whole class because I already proved him wrong a couple of times before, and he was way too proud to accept it. So I went back to my desk, not without maliciously smiling to the whole class. And 2 hours later, the class is finished, so I go to see the teacher, and the dialogue goes something like this. "You wanted to see me?" "Yes, this is obviously not your homework. What is this?" Now my goal was to play dumb and let him realize all by himself what I did. "I don't get you. This is my homework. What's the issue?" "This isn't possible. It's way too massive. For the last time, what is this?" He was boiling with anger from my apparent lack of understanding, and this was glorious. Well, it wasn't easy. Sure, it's a lot, but it is my homework, sir. Realizing this wasn't going anywhere, he told me to go. When I burst out of the room, everyone basically jumped on me to ask what was going on. I explained to them everything, and we were all laughing our asses off when the teacher left the classroom, even more puzzled. The aftermath. 3 things I didn't tell you about this teacher. First, he prides himself with grading our papers as fast as possible, sometimes in one evening. Second, nobody likes him. And by that, I mean all other teachers and the administration despise him. Teachers because he's messing with our grades, admins because he's an endless source of complaints. Third, holiday homework is worth a disproportionate amount in the final grade. On Wednesday, he gives us back our homework, but mine is missing, obviously, so I ask him, "Sir, you didn't give me my work back." He looked at me with the nastiest gaze one could imagine, probably because he tried understanding what I wrote and failed. "I'm not grading that." "Why?" I asked with the most theatrical, shocked tone, which included a few chuckles. "You know why. Stop playing nice." The day goes on, and once again, this was expected. Final part of my plan is coming. I go directly to the administration. I don't really know how school hierarchy is designed in other places, but admins here mean people that are in charge of him and can force him to do stuff. I explain the situation, but I don't bother them with the math details. I.e., I basically tell them that I tried to be more rigorous than usual since the teacher seems to like rigor, and that it obviously made my work a little bit longer, but that's no reason not to grade it, and that because of the proportion of it, it would basically destroy my GPA. The teacher's called on the spot and has to explain himself to the admin. He tries to justify himself, but the admin is not blind to what I was trying to achieve and seemed to be on board with it. He was having none of it. A full argument later, in which I wasn't able to say a single word, admin basically says to my teacher that he has to grade my work, and fairly. He's fuming, and I won. I knew I won because knowing how proud he is, he'll pass an enormous amount of time trying to find any single mistake, and to do that, he had to understand what I was writing. He knew he couldn't randomly assign a grade because I'd ask him to point out my mistakes. 3 months without my assignment from his part later, he gives me my work back. I got 100%. He got to learn about some pretty cool maths, and most of all, he stopped annoying us with everything that he didn't consider perfectly rigorous. After that, I did my best to help lost students get back on track, and in the end, pretty much everyone was accepted into the school they deserved. I'll make the quesadillas exactly as ordered, but you pay the dry cleaners. Still on hubby's account, an autocorrect error, and my son's hungry stomach reminded me of my first conscious MC. It also kept away from Mexican food until I re-met my husband. Back in the beginning of the 21st century, I was working in a cafe/sandwich shop. It was a 24/7 shop in a prime location, in an area with lots of university students, and a very active nightlife. The road was a major artery for anyone traveling in or out of the city. When I started as a first-year uni student trying to make some money, the shop was one of a 4 small chain. Gary, the owner/manager, has bought the rights to the original shop. Gary was also doing quality control for the shop because at that point, every shop had separate vendors. Fast forward 2 years, the original owners decide to incorporate because they have lots of offers for franchising and a couple of problems with quality control have appeared. So they bought back all the shops and institute a more centralized approach to vendors. That was good for Gary because he was the owner of the building, so he basically became a salaried manager and got extra income from the rent. Initially, nothing changed, and we were still number 2 in sales. Product was good. Then, Dick entered the picture. Dick was the new regional manager. The small chain had become big enough to reach national level, and the person responsible for quality control. He was considered something of a golden boy, having a business degree and helping with the expansion. The problem came from his ego. You see, Dick had done a cooking workshop that provides a certificate but nothing more, and considered himself something of a chef. His first major change was installing a crepe station. Not restaurant quality crepes, but crepes on the go, folded like triangles. That's important for later. While a bitch to learn at the beginning, it quickly became one of our best sellers. We usually went over 10 liters of crepe mixture on a slow day. Having success with his first change, Dick decided to apply his chef training and implement some new things. At this point in time, Mexican cuisine was becoming popular in my country, due mostly to cooking shows. Dick decides to ride that trend and starts putting Mexican options on the menu. In reality, that meant 2 more set sandwiches and crepes, the ones on the board, and a few more customization options for the sandwiches and crepes. Here begins the problem. As I said, Mexican cuisine was quite the new thing. Our country's cuisine is way different from Mexican, especially on the spice level. A lot of the produce used for Mexican food was either rare or non-existent. But Dick was adamant it was another win for him and found a vendor. The quality started to fail. We started to receive buckets of pre-made chili and queso and jars of picked jalapenos and pre-made guacamole and pico de gallo dips. Also, blocks of white cheese labeled queso blanco. The queso was an orange paste with some red bits in it. According to hubby, under a bad light it could pass for bad queso. And the left a very plastic taste. It reminded me of clay. One taste of that kept me away from Mexican food for a while. The jalapenos weren't jalapenos. They were picked Thai green chilies labeled as jalapenos, meaning they were way hotter than expected. I've never tasted the rest, but some adventurous customers that tried them weren't impressed. The only new thing that kind of sold was a plate of nachos, basically because it was Doritos covered in queso. When it was heated, it became an orange liquid, a lot of bacon and a lot of sausage. We have complained about the quality to Gary, but he couldn't do anything anymore, and Dick doesn't back down. Dick is becoming a bit upset about the low sales. He blames us. You're not pushing them enough. And the customers. Those barbarians couldn't recognize a filet mignon from a shark. But he sticks to his guns, and then brings corporate to the shop. Dick comes in with 4 people from HQ. 2 of them are the owners. They sit, and Dick comes and places an order for 5 quesadillas. It's a self-service shop, and I ask how he wants them. Exactly as it says on the board, and prepared exactly as I told you. Okay, sir. I'll call you when they're ready. Now Dick, in his chefy wisdom, has given us very specific instructions for the quesadillas. First, take out of the way, it wasn't a proper quesadilla. It's a crepe. The instructions were reheat the chili, start the crepe, place 1.5 ladles of reheated queso, add 1 ladle of chili, add a tablespoon of chopped jalapenos, 1 tablespoon of queso blanco, half a tablespoon of guacamole, and fold. Doing that produced a liquid mess which we tried really hard to escape from a thin crepe. We usually reheated the queso only for nachos, especially in a crepe. We'd put it cold and let it reheat with the plate's heat to avoid the aforementioned mess. Cue malicious compliance. We, as in me and the other girl working, make 5 quesadillas exactly as instructed. I took the order to the table, as it's corporate after all, and just waited for the results. 5 people, wearing white shirts and suits, bite into their quesadillas. The quesadillas almost simultaneously explode, raining in melted cheese and red chili on them. Some of them have bitten a jalapeno, and the heat is hitting them hard. A few choice words were heard, and we brought them 2 bottles of water for the heat and 2 full packs of napkins to clean what they could. Let's say the new menu wasn't a blast with HQ. After they left, Dick came back and he was beyond angry. He approached the bench, bypassing the line, as it was during one of our rush hours, and he made a scene. The following dialogue is just a bit censored. "You stupid bitch! You made me look bad because you don't like Mexican food. You can't even follow basic instructions. The cleaning of your mess will be deducted from your pay, and some other more offensive stuff." I was standing there dumbfounded, along with a long line of customers hearing his outburst, and then Gary intervened. "Shut the f*** up." "What did you just say?" "I said, shut the f*** up. The girls followed your instructions to the letter. Don't try to blame them for your mistake, or make them pay for your dry cleaning. I can do whatever I want, and when I'm finished with them, maybe I'll find another manager for this shop. I'd love to see you try." "Oh, I will. I will." And he storms out. The fallout. Immediately, Gary called HQ and notified them about what happened. He also gave an ultimatum. If something happens to his staff, the company would need to find a new location. 3 days later, we were notified that Dick was fired. While his outburst was the main reason, one of the owners having a really bad reaction to the jalapenos, a week later, the Mexican menu was removed. During that part, they found out that Dick had used the cheapest vendor for the new menu. The vendor had a reputation for shady practices, which partly explained the weird products. I stayed there until I finished uni and got a job in my field. The Mexican menu made a huge comeback 2 years before I left. This time, HQ got a proper chef to consult and find vendors. Now the ingredients are as authentic as possible. Pico and guac are made daily in-house. They also have good queso now, although it took me a long time to try it. And no pre-packaged, pre-made chili. In fact, no chili at all. My repulsion to Mexican food ended when my husband took me to a proper restaurant and finally tested a proper Mexican meal. Well, there you have it, folks. The end of today's Malicious Compliance. If you like these stories, be sure to leave a like on the video, as well as make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on. That way you can stay up to date with all the latest and greatest. Do you have a favorite Mexican dish? Let me know what it is in the comment section below. And as always, my name's Ryan, the official host here on Reddit Voice, and I look forward to seeing you guys in tomorrow's video.